Snapshot. For those of you who are coming in from our public section, we are a professional development mentorship program that crosses between 3 different tracks of the case competitions, where a lot of the folks here are from mentorship and on research and development. So super excited to have those of you in our programs that are here for this panel. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers today, who are Romain Vakilitabar, who is a dear friend of mine, and Camille Doherty, who are part of a nonprofit organization called Pathos Labs that was founded by Romain. And Romain, if you want to start with yourself, we'll do an introduction and then go from there.
Yeah, deal. Well, hello. Such a pleasure to be here with you all today. My name is Romain, and first and foremost, want to thank Sebastian, who is really my brother from another mother. I know we state that pretty liberally these days, but it's true because I was there when he was born. So I have had the pleasure, not to put you on the spot and embarrass you, Sebastian, but I've had the pleasure to see him grow up from a cute little baby to this incredible change maker that he is today. So thank you, Sebastian, for this invitation. It's such an honor to be here. I'm so excited for all the amazing work that you all are doing. And I just wanted to start it off by thanking you. I mean, I think the people who are the ones to change things in the world are the ones who are on a Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, maybe Saturday morning for some of you, are the ones who are doing the work, right? When everyone else is relaxing or watching Netflix. The people who do things in the world are the ones who take every moment that they have and are focused on learning and growing and figuring out how they can have a positive influence on the world. And that's what you're doing. So just wanted to give a huge congrats to you all for being here today, because you are definitely the next generation change makers who will move this world in the right direction. So, yeah, I'll introduce myself. My name is Romain. Grew up in Colorado with Sebastian, and I started Pathos Labs a couple of years ago. So back in 2016, for those of you in the United States, because I know this is a pretty international community, you may know that in 2016, there was a presidential election. And leading up to 2016, it was a very divided and dark time. Believe it or not, it's continued far beyond 2016, as we've seen. But I was really trying to figure out what to do about the growing divisiveness and discord and hatred and vitriol that I was seeing in the United States. For the first time, I felt like neighbors weren't talking to one another based off of how they voted politically. And I felt like this was actually going to be the biggest challenge facing our democracy. Was not so much who was going to get elected as president, although what we've seen is that that's had a pretty big impact on not only our country, but our world. But I felt like this bifurcation of society was really going to be what was going to undermine our democracy. So at the time, 2016, growing divisiveness, what does one do to really mend the gaps? It's a big undertaking, and I wasn't quite sure what to do about it. So I started Pathos Labs. Pathos Labs is a laboratory really focused on asking the question, what can technology and media, these very tools that were used to create the divisiveness and the hatred, and the misinformation, how could these very tools be used to accelerate the rate of compassion, kindness, empathy, understanding across divides? And so I built a career not on having an answer, but on asking a question. And I think that that's something that I've really enjoyed doing, is that I have never been the one to say, hey, I've got all the answers to society's biggest problems, because these problems and challenges are so complex that oftentimes we miss a lot of the detail, we miss a lot of the nuance, we propose ideas that don't take into account the complexity of these issues. And so I started Pathos Labs as a laboratory. And, you know, if I think all of you are in college, maybe some of you are in labs, whether you're studying the sciences or not, but the point of a laboratory is what? It's to learn, it's to try, it's to hypothesize, it's to test different hypotheses and see, you know, how can we get a little bit closer to an answer, to an intervention that can be successful. And so that is what we're doing under the lens, under the thread of fixing our democracy, challenging the growing divides, and using technology, media, and entertainment as a vehicle to do so. So that's just a quick introduction, Sebastian. I don't want to steal the floor. I know this is a little bit more question and answers format. And I did want to bring in my amazing associate, Camille, who's been the community lead at Pathos Labs, who I invited into the mix because she's a college student herself who, I won't steal your story. Camille, jump in and take it from here.
Well, thanks, Roman. Yeah, so I'm Camille, and I'm from Denver, Colorado. And I actually just graduated high school this spring from Colorado Academy. So like everyone is experiencing kind of in their own way. This year has been a year of many pivots. So in many ways, it's been quite a gift because kind of these redirects have led me down the really fascinating and rewarding path with Pathos Labs that I would have never explored otherwise without these kind of shakeups in life. So currently I'm taking a gap year from college. I'll go to Claremont McKenna College in the spring, or rather the fall of next year. So right now I'm working as community lead with Pathos Labs. I started out as an intern at the beginning of the summer, kind of reached out cold to Roman. There was no, open position. I don't even think he was too excited about having an intern. I can let him share a little more about that.
Correct. I was not thinking. Yeah, I was not excited.
Interested in that, made the connection. I'm super passionate about, how entertainment and storytelling can really influence social norms and kind of get us to be more civically engaged and promote empathy. And I really aligned and resonated with the work that Roman was doing. So made that initial connect. He was nice enough to take a chance on me. And it's been a really rewarding experience. And I've had the opportunity to now continue my work kind of in a new position. And I'm super excited to be here. This seems like a great program, and I'm super happy that Sebastian invited us to come and share some thoughts.
Thank you both, and appreciate you putting on the spot, brother. I knew that was going to happen. No key.
Oh yeah, you invite me, you gotta expect that.
Putting you back on the spot, taking things back more so.
I guess that's fair.
More so, even 4 years before Pathos in 2016, you were doing some stuff that's really cool, and actually was one of the reasons why. One of the reasons why Project Snapshot is now a thing is because of Roman and his inspiration to me actually doing work at the University of Colorado Boulder, where he went to for his bachelor's with a program called Watson. So Roman, could you give us a little bit background into how Watson started, where you got involved, and where it's came to now?
Yeah, you got it, Sebastian. So I'm always a little bit cautious as far as how I talk about Watson, because when we started Watson, I was a very disgruntled junior in college. I had dropped out of college because I was frustrated that I was just sitting through classes, not necessarily learning the skill sets that I felt like were necessary to address some of the world's most intractable problem sets. And I felt like there are so many fires happening concurrently around the world, right? And I don't mean real fires, although that's definitely happening. I mean these metaphorical fires, these challenges that humanity is up against. And sitting in class, I was thinking, like, it's great that I'm learning about some of these things theoretically, what is the application of some of these things? And furthermore, what is the application as it relates to solving problems that are so important and necessary to solve in this day and age? And I didn't necessarily feel like it was leading me in that direction. I felt like I was learning for learning's sake, not learning for doing's sake, and not doing for the sake of bettering humanity. So, so I decided to drop out of college at the time, really unsure of what I was going to do next, but became motivated to try to think about new models for higher education. So, oh, hey, you spotlighted my video for everyone. Thanks, Sebastian. I'm honored. So that's really what led to Watson, was just this dissatisfaction with the status quo. And starting a new university is not easy. And I think the greatest thing that I had back then was being naive, was being completely unaware of how difficult it would be. Because when you're naive, you're willing to take that first step. You're willing to dream. You're willing to believe that you're able to do something really big. And that's something that I hope that all of you keep indefinitely, is that naivete, is that belief in yourself in challenging very big systemic challenges in the world. So we started Watson, not really totally sure what the result would be. Ended up partnering with the University of Colorado because they were fascinated by this model that we had developed. And now we have 3 campuses around the world. So one's in Boulder, one's in Florida, another's in Guatemala. There are a couple others that are kind of being tested out in different markets. And really the focus is, how do we bring together, I call it the Hogwarts for social change. So how do we bring together these minds, these entrepreneurs, these change makers who don't really feel like they belong in the traditional system? And how do we place them in an environment where the goal is for them to actually hypothesize ways that they can address some of these very real problems in their communities? And over the course of, it's an accelerated degree, so 2.5 years instead of 4, they would present solutions, and we would build a venture for them, would help them build a venture for them to actually bring these solutions to the world, to earn revenue and make a profit off of solving some of these challenges in the world. So that was in 2013. And it's cool to see how it's moved in the right direction. And I'm touched that it's inspired you, Sebastian, when you were putting Project Snapshot together. I didn't really know that until you just recently mentioned it, and I felt really honored by that. So, so yeah, and as I'm sure you all know, a lot of common threads between what Project Snapshot is doing and what Watson aimed to do. So that's a little bit more about that journey. Plenty of other stories, obviously, as it related to, 3 young kids trying to start a new university model. A lot of challenges, a lot of things that we came up against that we didn't really expect. But it's cool to see that we made it happen, and it's up and running still today, and it's served hundreds of students all over the world who have started companies or nonprofit organizations that have served tens of thousands of individuals. So it's cool to kind of track that impact in the world, from just like 3 individuals who were not super satisfied with higher ed to now like probably 50 different organizations that were started because of Watson, who are each, employing people and serving people in different markets around the world. So it made me smile when I heard that there are some people tuning in from different parts of the world. Looks like you already have quite the international community that you've built. And you've done it in way lesser time than it took us. So kudos to you on that.
And building off of what you mentioned in the sense of like challenges, things that you didn't really expect, and really your takeaways from translating your time in Watson to your time in Pathos, like whether it's choosing one experience or a few, can you talk about some learning moments that you had and how you hope that will translate into the people here that might be founders eventually in the future?
Yeah, totally. I think like the common thread in my experiences, and the reason I brought Camille to join in, because she totally embodies this as well, is just kind of that hustle mindset, that like don't take no for an answer mindset. So I'll invite Camille to share a little bit more about like how she got involved, because she, kind of like a lot of you, was looking for an internship, reached out to me. She mentioned it briefly. I was not really open to the idea of having an intern. I've had interns in the past, and it's been
Oops.
more work than it was worth in my past experiences. So I wasn't super excited about it, but she totally challenged me, and I'm really happy that she's on the team. Now she's no longer just an intern; she's a full-time employee, which is really exciting. So Camille, jump in. Tell them how you found your way to becoming a full-time employee.
For sure. Well, actually, kind of in the transition time between, being an intern and becoming kind of this new role as community lead, my initial thought with my experience with Pathos Labs was, kind of a 3-month summer internship, getting involved, seeing what this field was like. And then I started to really, resonate with the projects we were doing. At the same time, kind of hit this intersection where my peak in this organization was rising, and I was getting super interested. And then my college announced that they were doing online learning. So, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to take a gap year and kind of explore this field and kind of get more experience hands-on, learning what it's like to kind of start your own adventure and get involved in the fields you're interested in, rather than just learning about it in a class. It's kind of to the persistence key. When I originally applied for my gap year, I actually got rejected. And I sat with that for about a week. And then I decided, this is kind of a really unique opportunity to do what I want and to hustle and work hard. And I want to be involved with Pathos Labs. I don't want to do online classes. So I came back to the administration, was like, you know what, you gave me that rejection letter, but I'm going to offer you something new. So I had this whole proposal as to, why it's good for me to take a gap year. Got a meeting with the head of admissions and got them to change their mind. So that's kind of how I'm here working for Pathos Labs. And that kind of opened a new opportunity and a new door to this really exciting venture. So kind of that persistence is really key. And there can be, a lot of rejection in this field, but that shouldn't necessarily, be a turnoff. That could just mean, okay, maybe not this direction, or that could also mean, okay, not this approach, try again. What else do you got? So that's kind of the path I took, not really taking no for an answer. I think a lot of folks have the passion, and that's the key to getting started. But then if you can follow it up with the hard work and the hustle, that's where like you make things happen for yourself. And that can happen at any age. I mean, I just graduated high school, and I'm involved in this really cool opportunity. So you can surprise yourself by just being persistent and working hard.
And just to chime in real quick.
All of that. Go for it.
Yeah, just to chime in. I think Camille probably doesn't realize this about her, but what impressed me too was that in the past, I think a lot of interns have just waited for me to give them a project and have done the project. Hopefully not all of them have, but most of them would, and then they just wait for me to give them another project. And oftentimes they wouldn't quite know how to do it, so I'd have to show them how to get the project done. And Camille, what I think I really appreciated about your approach was that rather than waiting to be given a task, you're always sending me a note like, hey, I know you have this meeting, like what can I do to help? Or hey, actually I have this idea. I think we should bring in Lin-Manuel Miranda for this big event that we're doing. And so she would actually really take the lead in asking what she could do, asking how she could alleviate maybe some of the tasks or the load that was really riding on me. And it made it so seamless, right? Like, oh yeah, thanks for asking. Here's something that you could do really quickly that would really help me prepare for this big meeting that we would have with CBS or NBC Universal. And she's reached out to so many individuals, has gotten rejected a ton of times. But we have a meeting with like Lin-Manuel Miranda's team on Monday, thanks to Camille. And so that was her idea. She thought he'd be really a cool person to engage. She crafted the email. I gave her a thumbs up that it was well written and ready to go. She found the contact info of the right folks, sent it out. She booked the meeting, put it in my calendar, and yeah, I just wake up one morning and she's like, "Hey, we've got a meeting booked with Lin-Manuel Miranda's team." So it was really cool. Like, she took the initiative. She wasn't waiting for instruction, and I think that was a rare quality that I haven't necessarily seen in at least any of the other interns that I've had in the past. So anyways, I thought it'd be really cool to bring her in because I know this is an internship kind of experience-based approach that you guys are all leading up. And I just thought it'd be a cool case study at the very least.
Thanks, Roman. I appreciate it.
And Camille, going back to you, what were some takeaways as far as like your summer before you transitioned into community? What were some of your takeaways as far as like how would you recommend students like what Romain already mentioned, taking initiative and really reaching out as far as whatever projects you can help on? What are some other things that you'd like to chat about, whether it's by experience or in general, as far as how students can make the most of their first internships experiences they might have this summer or fall?
For sure. I think that's a great question. I think a lot of young people have like really fervent passion, but sometimes it can feel, isolating to not know where to go with it or to not know if someone else shares that passion. And I think just knowing that there are people out there that want to connect with you and being persistent and trying to find the right connections for someone to kind of guide you through your passion and actually implementing that into something that can have a real social change. That's super important. So don't be afraid to, make that first connection. You don't have to feel like you need to wait for an open position to happen at a company. With Pathos Labs, there was no, slot on the website that said internship application, open position. If you're really passionate about something, just go for it and make the connection. And if someone sees your passion, they're willing to take a chance on you, hopefully. So I think that's super important. And, just being true to what you're actually interested in. If you follow that passion, you're going to find the right folks who share that with you and will want to invest in you. So take advantage of that as well.
And that's kind of a perfect segue into our next topic, as far as we always hear this cliche term of the word networking and what is networking. And with that in mind, you mentioned cold emailing and getting a lot of rejection beforehand. Even like telling yourself 3 months ago, what would you go back and tell that 3 months young Camille to keep on going and keep on doing? And what experiences have you learned from that as well?
Yeah. I think maybe one of the biggest differences between now and then is kind of that confidence piece. It can feel kind of vulnerable as a young person to feel like you don't have too much experience to offer. But there actually is a lot that young people offer in terms of like new ideas and passion and hard work. So being confident in yourself can go a long way. Also, I think just the advice of saying yes and diving deep. There's been a lot of cool opportunities. Roman mentioned, like, I've gotten to sit on meetings with NBC Universal executives. We have that meeting with Lin-Manuel Miranda's team. Really cool opportunities that can seem, a little daunting, a little scary, but just jumping in and saying yes and feeling confident in what you have to offer. And, even speaking up in those meetings, for the first few, I could definitely see kind of the transition in my own involvement and participation. The first one's, kind of casually sitting in on the Zoom, and then later on kind of chiming in and understanding that you do have value, even with these really influential folks. As a recent high school grad, like, there are some insights that you can offer that can actually be really beneficial. So having that confidence and the willingness to just say yes, even though it's scary.
100%. And Roman, also to put you on the spot again, like my family and I joke because like Roman is a master of networking. He knows how to do all this stuff. He makes it seem so easy. And with that in mind, like we all know it isn't as easy as people sometimes make it seem. Between whether it's with Watson, whether it's with Pathos, or whether it's with any of the film-related projects that you've done, like the incredible people that you've met as a result, what are things like in your life now that you can add on to what Camille said or contradict as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have a very different process of networking than most people. And so my approach, my approach is to make at different networking events 1 to 2 close new friends. And I know that like traditional networking is like, how many business cards can we get over the course of this next like 2-hour cocktail? Or maybe some of you are too young for cocktail. Yeah, just like these conferences, right? Like getting someone's business card means nothing, but instead developing a relationship with 1 or 2 individuals, if you do it right, if you really are intentional and meaningful about really crafting a beautiful relationship with them, then all of a sudden they'll be willing to introduce you to all of their contacts, right? Because they trust you. Like no one is gonna introduce you to someone in their network if they don't really know you, if they don't really trust you. And so I see a lot of people at these networking events just like going around and working the room and trying to get as many contact details as possible, as many business cards as possible. And sure, you've got their contact information, but if they don't remember you, then good luck really doing anything with them or with that. And even more so, like they're not going to extend their network to some individual who just seem to be there for this transaction of getting their business card. So all that to say, like my approach in networking has become, and it took me some time to get there, but it's become, just like being at peace, not trying to feel stressed about like, oh, I need to meet all of these people all at once, but being at peace with making 2 or 3 new friends. And really, honestly, that has paid off so much. I mean, all of my experiences, all of the opportunities, whether it's funders, whether it's partners, have like 98% have been individuals who introduced me to that person, say at NBC Universal or wherever. And because it's a warm introduction, the person on the other end is excited to meet, right? Because someone that they trust in the middle is connecting us. So you're really leveraging that trusting relationship in ways that I think like that's what it takes in order to network your way into the world. Is just there's this really cool story, and I don't want to speak too much, but there's this really cool story about Cesar Chavez. You probably know who Cesar Chavez is. Hugely important individual in American history. But he was speaking, I think it was in California somewhere at a university, and these students who were really interested in like mobilization, on like movement building, drove across the country to see him speak, but because he's this individual who's done movement building better than arguably anyone else. And so they go and try to like wait in line to see him speak, and they have the chance to ask him a question after his session. So they wait in line, and once they get the mic, they ask Cesar Chavez. They're like, hey, Cesar, you are the best person to talk about mobilization. You've been able to mobilize millions of people to take action. How did you do it? And so Cesar, pauses for a bit. And he thinks to himself, and then he responds, well, I talked to one person, and then I talked to another person, and then I talked to another person, and I talked to another person. They're like, yeah, but like that doesn't make sense. Like you've mobilized millions, like tens of millions of people. Like there's no chance that you were able to like individually talk to all of these individuals to get them on board. And he's like, well, you talk to one person, then you talk to another, then you talk to another. And it's more than just talking. It's about like bringing yourself, bringing meaning to the conversation, creating a relationship. And those people that feel like they can trust you, feel motivated by what you're doing, feel impassioned by your by what you're saying and how you're trying to address problems in their lives, they will pass along, you know, the gospel to their followers, to their friends, to their community members. And pretty quickly, when you lead that way, you can really build huge movements that can really catalyze humanity. So that was a very long-winded answer of saying, you know, just be really real, be really intentional, be really present, and build, you know, one relationship after another, as opposed to this kind of spray and pray approach of just like, let me try to talk to everyone, and like hopefully one of the people will respond to my email this evening when I follow up with the 60 people whose business cards I just got, right? So that's what I would say makes good networking, is just the ability to make one friend, a real friend, and then make another friend. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, definitely. And I think we can all, for just because of like this conversation is revolving around the theme of really taking the most out of your experiences, redirecting your life as things come up, and really just being open and learning to grow with the taking it back to Pathos as a whole. Do you, as far as like the original scope of work, the original work that you wanted to do, how has that changed over time? And if you can you talk about some of the projects that you're working on now that you're most excited for people to see?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. And I think that's another thing. Like, I know all of you probably aren't entrepreneurs. Maybe some of you might consider that. Maybe some of you are all entrepreneurs already. But I think you have to have enough tolerance for uncertainty, enough tolerance for being wrong, enough tolerance for moving and adapting and pivoting. When we started in 2016, we started because I was excited about the role of virtual reality, VR, in creating empathy across divides. And so what I ended up doing was I Googled how to build a virtual reality camera system and found a specification, a specs sheet that like actually didn't make it too difficult. All I needed to do was 3D print some parts, get a couple of GoPros, plug in the GoPros into this 3D printed mold, and stick that mold on a tripod. That's it. So I would, and whenever I say I built my own for VR camera system, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy! You're like an amazing engineer." And you know, I laugh at that because it really didn't take too much to make it happen. But I did that, and then reached out to a couple of production companies saying, "Hey, this was like 2016 when everyone was interested in VR. Not a lot of content creators were creating VR content. I reached out to them saying, hey, like I've got a VR camera system that I built. Let me know if you need any work." And a production company sent me to Kenya to do some work with them in what's known to be Africa's largest slum. So I did a VR experience there for one of their clients. And then I did a VR experience just kind of for myself to practice my storytelling. And that went to film festivals all over the world. It was crazy. I didn't really expect it, but went to, film festivals I had never even heard of. Film festivals were talking to each other and they were like sending my video, my VR experience. And, you know, I didn't even have to submit my film to these film festivals and they were like screening it. I got like, one day I came home and I got a trophy in the mail from some film festival I had never heard of for having won audience choice, which was kind of funny. And so at the very beginning, VR was kind of the focus. Like, how do we use virtual reality to create empathy across divides? And now we're not even doing anything with VR. I think partially that's because the appetite for VR has dwindled a little bit, but it's also because in my pursuit for really truly creating understanding, compassion, empathy across divides, what we realized is that there's another model that could be even more effective. A model that was informed based off of conversations I had with behavioral scientists who are experts on what it actually takes to challenge prejudice and bias in America, what it actually takes to overcome divisiveness and discord in America. And I was talking to them because I obviously wanted to stay true to my mission of doing that, of overcoming divides. And pretty quickly what we came to realize is that maybe one of the greatest levers for doing this that has not necessarily been pulled yet is using scripted television content to create new social norms of cohesion, of people who are getting along across divides. The more that people see that imagery on screen, the more that they will believe that positive cross-cultural contact is the norm, is what's encouraged. The more that they would realize that there isn't actually a lot of distance between us and them. So we started doing some work with TV writers, and now the big project we're working on is we're bringing 50 of the country's leading television writers with 50 of the country's leading experts, behavioral scientists, diversity, equity, and inclusion leaders, conflict resolution leaders, truth and reconciliation leaders, some of whom are New York Times bestselling authors or some of TED's most popular speakers. And we're bringing them together with TV writers to try to figure out how do we write stories that really model positive citizenry, help model how to come together across divides in a meaningful way, and helps model like what's possible for our worlds. There's the belief that reality follows imagination. And if we can imagine something, then the likelihood that it becomes reality is a whole lot higher. So how do we create a shared imagination through television for what's possible in our world? So that's what we're doing. We're convening all these folks on October 23rd. And so me and Camille and Andrea, who's also on our team, have really been, pushing things forward pretty aggressively to make sure that we have everything in place for our big convening in October. So yeah, that's what's currently on the docket. Doing less work with VR, doing a lot more work with like scripted content and kind of studio entertainment.
That's so cool. Just like no other explanation. No, I'm kidding. But that's going to be really interesting to see how that has that trickling down impact on the world at large in the future. So we look forward.
Yeah, who knows? I hope so. I hope it does.
And going back to Camille, whether it's like generally speaking or experience-wise as well, what are some things that have really stuck with you over your time at Pathos, and what's resonated with you most personally with the work that you wanted to keep on doing in the future?
For sure. I think one of the coolest things is just kind of being involved in a community of people that are interested in the same things. In high school, I was interested in storytelling for social change, but I couldn't really find the right words to describe my passion. And I didn't really have a community of people who were interested in the same thing. So reaching out to Romain and now being involved with Pathos Labs, I've gotten to communicate and, be involved with people who are interested in the really same things, and seeing how they, really pioneer this field and how they approach these relationships and these partnerships has been fascinating. So I'm really grateful for the experience. I think doing things like this, internship opportunities, especially from a young age, has just been such a good experience knowing what it's like to actually be involved in this field. You know, I was doing a lot of research and a lot of thinking in my own head, but now having people to share this with and having actually an initiative like Pop Shift Summit to kind of channel that passion into has been such a rewarding experience. And I feel like that will really help me in the future with my own confidence and my own passion in whatever endeavors come next.
And for both of you, since we are running closer to time, what do you think, is your wish for students listening or students that'll be listening later because of their time zones? What do you hope for students to take away from your time here, this talk, and your work in general?
What are your thoughts, Camille? What's a good takeaway?
I guess because Project Snapshot is, you know, a really unique community of young people. Like as a recent high school grad, like don't feel limited by your age. Like if you hustle and you find the right connections and you stay passionate, like there are people who want to take a chance on you, and you have the opportunity to actually have an impact because you have really important insights. So don't feel like that is a limitation. And if you can't find anything that seems like it works for you, then take a note from Roman and start your own thing and make that happen and make that be something really cool that other people want to follow in and that you can engage young people in. So don't feel limited by your age.
Cool, that was so well said. One quick thing that maybe I'll end with is this cool story about an elephant. It's she's a really big, beautiful, girthy, strong elephant, and doesn't realize her power. And all she sees around her are other elephants who are strong, but she doesn't really see herself as being strong. And the reason for that is when she was really young, even though she's the biggest elephant around me, but even though but when she was young, she was tied to a really massive tree trunk when she was just a baby. And so she would tug and tug and tug, and the tree trunk wouldn't give. And so she grows older and she's still tied to this tree trunk and starts to give up. You know, what's the point? I can't move this tree trunk. And now here she is, this giant, full-grown elephant, beautiful and strong, tied to a fence post, this really flimsy fence post, tied with a unraveling cord, and doesn't tug because all she sees is a futile endeavor. And forgetting that she is much stronger than she thinks, and that she's, you know, helpless because she learned to be helpless. So the story is interesting to me because I think we're all living in a world where we are much stronger than we think we are, but we're tied to something. There's something tying us down, and we've been enculturated, whether it's through the things that our parents have told us, whether it's the things that our friends or mentors or what society has told us, to believe that there's not much that we can do about it. And now here we are, tied just to a really flimsy thing that's bounding us with an unraveling wire, and we're not tugging. And I feel like we all need to realize the strength that we all have. We all have to reflect to one another and remind one another how strong they are in case that they've forgotten it. And I think, like Camille said, young people can change the world. I mean, they already have. And I'm so excited to see what you all will take on as your missions in life. And I'm excited that you're all part of this community, this supportive community that can really help you go to that next level, and will also remind you that you're much more powerful than you think you are. So I'll conclude with that.
Couldn't think of a better way to end that. Low-key don't even know how to follow up with that. So with that said, thank you, Romain, Camille, for your time.
Yeah.
And happy to open it up to a Q&A if anyone wants to unmute their mic and ask a question that popped up during the panel. We can do that now.
Yeah, I had a question for Romain. I know you mentioned the start of Pathos Labs in 2016. So how has it kind of grown like to 2020, and especially with so many different things challenging you throughout this whole summer? How has Pathos Labs like combated everything?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's there's so much going on, right? There are so many different issues that need to be addressed. And it's tough. It's tough. I mean, I think one is recognizing that you can't solve all the problems. So don't try. But two is also really thinking critically about how do we center people who need to be centered right now? How do we involve people who haven't necessarily been given the chance to take action, to speak up, to take the mic? And that's something that we've been really trying to do a good job of. I mean, we're bringing a lot of folks who I think right now are more important than ever before. Individuals who are experts on reparations in America, and individuals who are experts on the criminal justice system and how the criminal justice system is modern day slavery. And we're trying to give them the platform to really share their ideas on a stage that can really hopefully reach millions of people who watch television. So I think like that's been really a big focus, is how do we center their voices? How do we bring them into the folds as experts? How do we bring other people to listen to them as the experts in a time when, you know, maybe this is the first time anyone's ever noticed them, or anyone's ever paid attention to them? So I think like giving that platform has been one of the big things that we've been trying to do. But it's also hard, right? Like I think initially where we started was, you know, as bridge builders. And I think like activists and bridge builders have a lot in common except for one thing. And the one thing is that the bridge builders are willing to let go of what they believe to be right and wrong, right? Because when you're a bridge builder, it's like, okay, let's get past right and wrong and let's bring people together. Let's try to create these relationships. Let's, you know, sit next to someone who has a very different political ideology than we do, and let's listen to understand. And activists, you know, have a sense of what's right and aren't willing to put aside what they believe is right, even momentarily. And so in this space, you know, like, where do we fall? You know, what is Pathos's approach to this? Like, do we placate? Do we set our idea and sense of what's wrong and right aside? And it's really difficult. And I actually don't have a clear answer to that. I think like I have such like a strong motivation to do something. I like really I feel like I'm an activist. And I think like Pathos has kind of moved a little bit in that direction. But I also really think that bridge building is important now, even more so than ever before. And if we really want to address the problems of, I mean, fill in the blank, right? There are so many problems, but let's say racial injustice. I think we need the bridge builders to listen to those who aren't bought in yet, aren't willing to have that conversation, just to understand, where are they coming from? What are they concerned about? why do they feel like the activists are demonizing them? And how do we invite them into the picture where they feel like they're not being judged in the moment, right? So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but those are some of the thoughts, you know, like that's the meditation of the organization right now, is like, where do we position ourselves? How do we stand for what we believe to be right, but also stay true to the integrity and acknowledge the importance of bridge building in a very divided time. So yeah, it's more of a question than an answer once again. And yeah, I don't really often have definitive answers for much of anything. But I think like sitting in that question, like meditating in that question, being okay with the uncertainty is what will lead us to have more holistic, well-developed, well-crafted ideas. Will allow us to be able to relate to people who are different a whole lot better. So sitting in that space, being okay with not knowing. But yeah, a whole lot is happening, and we want to respond in a productive way, but don't necessarily definitively have the answer to that. I mean, we do think that the work that we're doing will hopefully have a positive role in moving things in the right direction, but we're definitely still like sitting in that space patiently.
Yeah, thank you.
100% class that all the way.
Good
I guess
question.
that was a great question, Elaine. I guess kind of personal thing that came up off the top of my head. How have you personally, professionally, Camille, you can answer this too totally. How have you both like navigated COVID-19, working remotely? How has that changed yourselves and Pathos works as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, not a ton has changed, and I mean, I there's a lot of privilege in being able to say that. But originally, we were supposed to have this convening in person in Los Angeles. Obviously, that can't happen, so we're doing it virtually instead. It's not a huge deal. In fact, it's actually kind of nice because it costs a lot less to produce than a physical conference and convening. So it hasn't really affected us too much, and it has actually given us the permission to do something virtually, which costs a whole lot less. So we've benefited from that in a way. The tough thing is maybe not being able to hang out and work with a team in the same room all the time, which I would certainly really enjoy. Andrea is our head of relationships, and she is incredible, but I've never met her. Hired her, and she's been based in Toronto. She helped start one of the largest LGBTQ film festivals in the world, called Inside Out Film Festival in Toronto. And so she's amazing, but haven't met her. So I think like that's kind of a bummer. We did a little bit of work focused on COVID response. So worked with a lab at Stanford University to try to figure out how we could increase compliance to CDC, WHO, public health guidelines for COVID, because a lot of people aren't complying. A lot of young people aren't complying. A lot of young people aren't wearing masks. A lot of young people are hanging out, like partying, 50 people in a small space together. But there's a lot of other communities that are less compliant. And so we were trying to figure out, how do we message COVID? How do we leverage also influencers to communicate COVID in ways that can most effectively increase compliance to public health guidelines? So that was a project that we did that we obviously wouldn't have done had COVID not been an issue. I don't know how effective we were, because compliance remains relatively low in the United States. So it hasn't really affected us that much. In fact, maybe like we've benefited from it, which is also kind of a weird thing to realize. So I try to remind myself of how many people are really suffering, how many loved ones have passed, how many people still in the United States don't have jobs and are trying to figure out how they're going to afford rent or their mortgage. So it's really real, and it's really sad what's happening for sure. But I guess it hasn't necessarily affected us as much as I would have originally expected.
To second that too, of course, there's. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Of course, there's a ton of challenges, but if you're looking for a silver lining, there is a lot more opportunity for folks. Like Roman said, Andrea, one of our teammates, is joining us from Toronto. So especially for people who are, interested in new opportunities or maybe internships, it opens up a lot of doors when you don't have to be in San Francisco or in New York. You can do it from your bedroom. So there's kind of a lot more opportunities in that sense. Like when you're looking around, you're no longer kind of bounded by geographical locations, and that can be pretty exciting. I don't think in any other time have we kind of had this cultural like acceptance now of virtual workplaces, and now that's the norm. So that's kind of a silver lining if folks are looking for it. Of course, there's also a lot of dropouts in terms of like open positions and jobs, but that is one positive thing to look forward to.
Well said.
Anyone else? 4 minutes.
Yeah, I just want someone to ask us a really juicy, tough question with the 4 minutes that remains.
Hey, Roman, can y'all hear me? My
Yes,
mic hasn't been working. I've been trying to ask a question. It wasn't working. I can't think of anything juicy.
Rachel.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. So I have a follow-up question, and you might laugh that I'm asking this, but I think it's a good one to follow up with. When it comes to production, how are you navigating COVID-19 on the production side of things?
Oh, I see what you're doing. Doing a little research, eh?
I'm trying, yeah.
So yeah, production has obviously halted in most of the United States. A lot of production companies are shipping their projects internationally. We create content too, and I failed to mention we're still working on a couple kind of short documentaries. Rachel has graciously agreed to help with one of them, so thank you, Rachel, for volunteering your time to support with one of the projects. But it's hard. I mean, like, what can you do, right? Like, what is the approach when like you can't necessarily show up and film people? I mean, I think like the good thing with documentaries is that all you really need is just like the verbal permission for like whoever subject you're interviewing to show up at their door and record them. And so long as like they're cool with it, then go for it. But like in Hollywood, like everyone is freaking out because I mean, like all these unions aren't really letting writers or producers or cinematographers, like they're very, like the unions for good reason are making sure that like nothing bad is happening. So like from a Hollywood production standpoint, I mean, like not a lot's happening in the United States. So like now is the time for the documentary filmmakers to show up, right? Like now's the time where Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and like all these direct-to-consumer platforms are like desperate for content, and documentary filmmakers, like now is the time where they can show up and create content. So Rachel, as you know, we're doing this is the project that Rachel's been supporting with. We're interviewing or doing a short documentary on someone who's currently incarcerated, who's serving a life sentence for a crime he didn't commit. And which is it's more prominent than most people think, these like false incarcerations. But yeah, I mean, the Colorado State Penitentiary where he is not letting they're closed to visitation. So no one can go in and record. We've done some filming at Colorado State Penitentiary in the past, so we have like a green light there, but we're just waiting for them to open their doors. So hopefully that will happen sooner rather than later. Who knows? I mean, COVID's just maybe getting started. I am afraid to say that because I hope that's not the case. But yeah, if anyone's interested in documentaries, this is like the time to double down on it, because I think there's a lot of opportunity, more so than ever before in that space.
Cool. Last calls for anyone? Any burning desires? Cool. We'll wrap it up here, but thank you all so much for coming and on a Saturday afternoon. I know it's a lot to ask, especially with our program speakers and our participants as well. So, Roman, Camille, if you're open, I'll send out ways for people to get in touch with you from the speakers here, and if there's anything that we can do for you as a program, let us know. So happy to help. But thank you both so much for your time. That's wonderful.
You bet. Yeah. Thanks for inviting us.
It's been great. Thank you.
Cool, y'all. Have a great weekend. We'll see you all next week.